Beneath the unassuming exterior, an unseen horror has forever shattered this home's tranquility. A wife, missing without a trace, her closest confidants worriedly searching for answers. By day's end, a discovery in a nearby park will shock an entire community, exposing the twisted secrets that lurk behind closed doors. Within these walls, one final argument sealed a fate no one saw coming. A husband stands accused of taking his wife's life, then abandoning her remains under a canopy of trees, turning a once peaceful landscape into a nightmare. As the sun breaks over the neighborhood, the question looms: how could a marriage built on trust end in the darkest betrayal imaginable? Welcome to CrimeByte, where we move beyond the headlines to reveal the unfiltered reality behind the most shocking true stories. Today we look into the chilling case of a husband accused of taking his wife's life and disposing of her remains in a public park. Brace yourself for a journey through heartbreak, hidden motives, and the warning signs we too often dismiss. If you find our content compelling, be sure to like this video, subscribe to CrimeByte, and click that notification bell so you never miss another gripping investigation. The Bennett residence sits at the heart of this neighborhood, an unassuming home with beige siding, a small front porch, and potted flowers by the door. To those on Aspenwood Drive, Lauren Bennett seemed like the quintessential neighbor, friendly, warm, ever willing to lend a hand. She volunteered at the local community center, organized food drives, and tutored kids in reading. People loved her energy and generosity, which created a welcoming atmosphere wherever she went. Married to Adam Bennett, a steady insurance employee, Lauren's life appeared stable. They were known for hosting barbecues every summer, drawing half the block for food and laughter. Smiling photos lined their hallway walls, wedding snapshots, holiday gatherings, and casual moments captured during weekend hikes. Friends spoke of them as a picture-perfect couple. Maybe not the most romantic duo, but certainly dependable. Over time, subtle changes emerged. Lauren's enthusiastic greetings became rarer, and she appeared more fatigued. A close friend, Alicia Perez, noticed bruises on Lauren's arms that she dismissed as clumsy accidents. Meanwhile, Adam grew withdrawn, no longer joking around at neighborhood events. When asked, he blamed work stress or back-to-back deadlines. Neighbors shrugged it off, assuming the Bennetts were simply dealing with the usual strains of modern life. Days turned into weeks, and small signs of tension became harder to ignore. Lauren started missing her usual volunteer shifts. Neighbors couldn't recall the last time they saw her do her morning jog. Some overheard muffled arguments through open windows. Sharp words quickly cut short when passersby appeared. Alicia grew worried, gently asking Lauren if everything was all right. Her friend forced a smile and insisted she was fine, but the strain in her eyes told a different story. No one could have predicted the tragedy that would soon surface. When Lauren vanished without warning, the community's initial reaction was disbelief. Could the sweet, dependable woman everyone admired have simply walked away from her life? Or did something darker unfold behind closed doors? As Aspenwood Drive awoke to the news of her disappearance, the seeds of suspicion took root, setting a chain of events in motion that would expose how an ordinary marriage concealed the makings of a terrifying crime. In the days following Lauren Bennett's sudden absence, a quiet unease settled over the neighborhood. People noticed her car still parked in the driveway. Newspapers piled up on the porch. The potted plants Lauren so lovingly tended began to wilt without her care. Friends texted her phone, but messages went unanswered. Calls went straight to voicemail. Concern grew into alarm when Lauren failed to show up at the community center for a scheduled volunteer shift. Her husband, Adam Bennett, seemed oddly calm throughout. When approached by neighbors asking about Lauren, he offered vague replies. She decided to stay with a relative, or she just needs some space. No one fully believed him, but they lacked proof of wrongdoing. Alicia Perez, Lauren's closest friend, refused to accept that Lauren would disappear without telling someone. She asked Adam to file a missing persons report, but he merely shrugged off the suggestion, claiming she wasn't truly missing. Alarmed by his nonchalance, Alicia visited the local police station. There, Sergeant Timothy Burns took her statement. He explained that missing adults are tricky to track unless there's evidence of foul play. An adult can leave home if they choose. Alicia insisted this was out of character. Lauren loved her life, her community work, and showed no sign of planning a sudden departure. Moved by Alicia's pleas, Burns agreed to look into the situation. Meanwhile, speculation buzzed among neighbors. Some wondered if Lauren had run off with a hidden lover, though no one had seen her with anyone else. Others whispered that Adam might have harmed her. People recalled the faint bruises on Lauren's arms, the late-night arguments, the way she once retreated from a gathering looking visibly upset. Suspicion swirled, fueled by Adam's disquieting calm. Alicia organized a small search party, focusing on nearby parks and walking trails Lauren frequented. Armed with printed flyers bearing Lauren's smiling face, they asked passersby if they'd seen her. Each no sank their spirits further. Day turned into evening, and a creeping sense of dread took hold. Had Lauren vanished of her own accord, or was something more sinister at play? The day after Alicia's plea, Sergeant Timothy Burns arrived to speak with Adam Bennett. On the surface, it seemed like a standard follow-up. Gather any details about Lauren's last known movements, double-check if she had health issues or reasons to leave. Adam greeted Sergeant Burns with a guarded expression, stepping aside to let the officer into a home that seemed unnervingly quiet. The walls, once adorned with photographs of the couple's adventures, now had patches of empty space. A faint smell of disinfectant lingered in the air, enough for Burns to raise an eyebrow. Adam repeated the claim that Lauren had left following a heated argument. When pressed for specifics, he mumbled about financial stress and constant bickering, but avoided eye contact. Each time Burns tried to pin down a timeline, Adam deflected. He spoke in short phrases, showing little emotion, which only intensified the officer's suspicions. Nevertheless, there were no visible signs of a struggle. No upended furniture, no shattered glass. In a purely procedural sense, the house appeared normal, perhaps too much so. Outside, Alicia hovered on the sidewalk, anxious to see if the police would uncover anything concrete. She knew Lauren wouldn't abandon her volunteer work and vanish without confiding in someone. Straining her ears, she caught fragments of the conversation. Adam's low grumble, Burns' steady questioning. An unease coiled in her stomach. Had Lauren left any clue behind, a note, a phone message? Alicia had checked Lauren's social media accounts, finding them inactive for days. Nothing added up. As Burns wrapped up his questioning, he offered Adam a chance to provide a more thorough statement at the station. Adam declined, saying he had work. That reluctance, combined with the sterile smell inside the house, left the officer uneasy. Once outside, Burns spoke briefly with Alicia, urging patience. He mentioned the need for evidence before escalating the case. Alicia's eyes brimmed with tears, frustration gnawing at her. Patience felt like an impossible demand when her best friend was missing. Early one morning, a local dog walker noticed something unusual in a secluded spot near the park's edge. A plastic sheet poked through mounds of loose soil, prompting the man to cautiously investigate. Almost immediately, he realized the sheet covered what appeared to be a lifeless form. Shaking with alarm, he dialed emergency services, and within minutes, police tape crisscrossed the area. As word spread that human remains had been found, speculation ran wild. Sergeant Timothy Burns and his team arrived, carefully documenting the scene. The plastic wrapping, partially torn, revealed fragments of clothing and what looked like a floral print, matching descriptions of Lauren Bennett's favorite blouse. Though identification would require forensic testing, the grim possibility that the body belonged to Lauren weighed heavily on everyone present. Back on Aspenwood Drive, neighbors exchanged shocked whispers. Some gathered at the Bennett's curb, peering anxiously down the street as police cars rushed past. The tension spiked when an unmarked vehicle pulled up in front of Adam Bennett's home. Officers knocked firmly on the door, their expressions steeled. Inside, they found Adam pale and unsteady, mumbling confusion about why the police had returned. Though no formal charges were brought yet, the timing was more than coincidence. If the remains were indeed Lauren's, the investigation would undoubtedly circle back to her husband. Meanwhile, Alicia Perez and other friends reeled from the park discovery. They had searched so many places, never expecting Lauren could be buried practically in their own backyard. With hearts pounding, they awaited official confirmation. Old memories of Lauren's laughter and generosity flooded Alicia's mind, mixing with anger at the thought that someone she trusted may have betrayed her in the worst way. At the crime scene, forensic teams worked meticulously, taking plaster casts of footprints, photographing every inch of disturbed soil, and collecting samples for DNA analysis. The location, concealed from the main trail by thick undergrowth, suggested deliberate intent rather than a random act. As night fell, the glow of floodlights illuminated a place that once symbolized fresh air and community fun, now transformed into the epicenter of a terrible revelation. Less than 24 hours after the grim discovery at Clearwood Park, Sergeant Timothy Burns presented a judge with probable cause for a search warrant of Adam Bennett's home. Tension rippled through the neighborhood as officers and forensic teams prepared to re-examine every inch of the Bennett's property. Locals peeked from behind curtains, stepping out only to confirm rumors that the woman found in the park might indeed be Lauren Bennett. A hush settled over the street, broken only by the muffled hum of police radios. When authorities approached Adam with the warrant, he displayed a veneer of calm, stepping aside with a dismissive wave. But that calm cracked under the glare of forensic experts combing through each room. In the kitchen, they discovered a conspicuously empty trash bin with fresh chemical scents. The laundry room yielded multiple bottles of industrial-strength cleaner and an almost new set of rubber gloves. Upstairs, they found carpeting ripped out in one corner, its fibers nowhere to be seen. These anomalies, though not definitive proof of a crime, painted a troubling picture. Outside, neighbors gathered in small clusters, whispering their theories. Some still clung to the notion that Lauren might have run off, but the facts were becoming impossible to ignore. Alicia Perez, standing on the sidewalk, watched the forensic team haul evidence bags to a waiting van. Tears brimmed in her eyes each time she remembered Lauren's gentle spirit and how unthinkable it was that she might be gone forever. As day slid into evening, officers carried out the last of the evidence, shutting the door behind them with a finality that reverberated across the block. Though no formal charges had yet been announced, the weight of suspicion pressed heavily on Adam. His posture sagged, and the half-lit windows of the Bennett home now glowed with an unsettling emptiness. Everyone sensed that after this day, the illusion of normal life on Aspenwood Drive had shattered. The question no longer seemed to be if Adam had harmed Lauren, but why, and how long before the truth would be laid bare. In the days following the search of the Bennett home, forensic results trickled in, enough to strengthen the case against Adam Bennett. Traces of blood matching Lauren's DNA were identified on portions of the floorboards, and chemical residue hinted at attempts to scrub away evidence. This finding sent a jolt through the local precinct, where Sergeant Timothy Burns wasted no time compiling a comprehensive report. Every photograph, every swab, every suspicious item bagged during the search now pointed to one chilling conclusion. Lauren hadn't merely run away. While the coroner's office worked to confirm the identity of the body found at Clearwood Park, unofficial whispers circulated among investigators that it belonged to Lauren. The floral print blouse and personal effects discovered with the remains left little doubt. Burns called in additional detectives to recheck statements from neighbors, co-workers, and anyone who'd interacted with Adam around the time of Lauren's disappearance. Testimonies revealed a man increasingly irritable and evasive, someone who'd bought unusual supplies in the days prior to the grim find. As the puzzle pieces aligned, the district attorney prepared the groundwork for an arrest. By the week's end, officers arrived at Adam's workplace, cuffs at the ready. He offered little resistance, claiming innocence but showing no visible shock at his detainment. Reporters captured footage of him being led away, his eyes fixed on the ground. The footage played repeatedly on local news, fueling public outrage and heartbreak in equal measure. Back on Aspenwood Drive, neighbors gathered in clusters, grappling with the reality that a murder suspect had lived among them. Some felt relief that the law had finally intervened. Others reeled at how swiftly the Bennett's once perfect marriage had veered into terror. Alicia Perez, now convinced Lauren was gone forever, struggled to process how a man she once believed stable could face accusations of such cruelty. Though the community yearned for closure, the legal process had only begun. With Adam behind bars, the countdown to a highly anticipated trial commenced, one that promised to unveil answers about Lauren's final hours and the twisted motives behind her tragic end. Inside the courthouse, a packed gallery awaits the trial of Adam Bennett, now officially charged with the murder of with his wife, Lauren Bennett. Somber expressions mark the faces of neighbors who have come to witness the proceedings. Alicia Perez, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, sits near the front, determined to stand for Lauren, even if only in the silent support of her presence. Reporters angle their microphones, ready to capture every revelation that emerges. When the prosecution delivers its opening statement, the atmosphere shifts. Prosecutors outline the evidence collected from the Bennett home: blood traces matching Lauren's DNA, suspicious chemical cleaning agents, and the recent removal of carpeting. They also describe text messages that show escalating tensions between husband and wife, painting a picture of a crumbling relationship on the brink. The jury listens intently, some already appearing unsettled by the gruesome details of how Lauren's remains were discovered in Clearwood Park. Adam's defense team attempts to argue that any evidence of violence could be explained by accidents, and that Lauren's disappearance might be connected to a third party. They suggest Adam panicked upon finding her gone, thus turning to cleaning and discarding certain items to cope with emotional turmoil. While the defense implies an alternative culprit, they offer no tangible suspect. Over the course of testimonies, law enforcement officials and forensic experts methodically dismantle the defense's claims, piece by piece. Then comes the emotional pinnacle. Alicia takes the stand. Her voice trembles as she recalls Lauren's whispered confessions of fear and mounting bruises. She fights back tears while describing how Lauren would never have abandoned her community-centered duties. This testimony, raw and heartfelt, resonates with the jury. Soft murmurs ripple through the courtroom, underscoring the gravity of Lauren's final months. By the session's end, the courtroom feels heavy with sorrow and indignation. Prosecutors rest their case, confident the evidence and personal testimonies have begun to shape an inescapable conclusion. As court adjourns for the day, the audience files out, shaken by the grim insights uncovered. A tragedy that once seemed inconceivable in quiet Aspenwood Drive. Inside the hushed courtroom, Adam Bennett sits rigid behind the defense table. Tension crackles in the air as the jury files in, prepared to deliver its verdict. Whispered prayers and rapidly beating hearts underscore the emotion in the gallery. Alicia Perez grips the edge of her seat, recalling Lauren's laugh, her generous spirit, and the faint hope that this moment might somehow restore dignity to her friend's memory. When the foreperson stands, the silence is near absolute. The verdict, guilty of murder in the first degree. A collective exhale sweeps the room. Some audience members nod solemnly, others let tears slip down their cheeks. Adam's expression remains stony, though his eyes seem haunted, as if he finally grasps the gravity of what has transpired. The judge delivers the sentence: life in prison, no chance of parole for decades, speaking firmly to the gravity of Lauren's tragic fate. For the residents of Aspenwood Drive, relief mingles with heartbreak. The block that once boasted backyard barbecues and friendly hellos must now contend with the reality that one of their own committed an unthinkable act. A memorial for Lauren springs up near the entrance to Clearwood Park, where neighbors leave flowers, handwritten notes, and photographs capturing her bright smile. The site becomes both a place of mourning and a call to remember the fragility of life hidden beneath suburban routines. Alicia finds small solace in the verdict, yet the emptiness of Lauren's absence remains. She visits the memorial often, lighting a candle at dusk. In the aftermath, local media shifts its lens to the broader conversation. The warning signs that preceded Lauren's death. The neighbors who heard late-night arguments but hesitated to involve authorities. The importance of trusting one's instincts when something feels wrong. Though the legal battle has ended, the emotional journey for everyone involved continues. Questions remain. Could anyone have intervened sooner? And how can they ensure that no other bright spirit meets the same fate behind closed doors? The answers, as the community soon learns, lie in the difficult but necessary process of confronting painful truths. Together, in the wake of the trial, the community begins a slow process of soul-searching. Conversations shift from shock and sorrow to the sobering question of how a tragedy like Lauren Bennett's could happen so close to home. Did neighbors overlook warning signs in an attempt to preserve suburban harmony? Were subtle cries for help masked by polite smiles and polite silences? As residents re-examine every fleeting interaction with Lauren and Adam, a new awareness forms. The realization that the seeds of violence can hide in the most ordinary of settings. Local newspapers publish editorials emphasizing the importance of looking out for one another. Civic groups host gatherings on recognizing domestic abuse, mental health struggles, and the small red flags that could herald greater danger. One such group meets in the high school gym, rows of chairs filled with attentive listeners. A speaker from a women's shelter addresses the audience, urging them never to ignore unexplained bruises or abrupt behavioral shifts. She reminds them that see something, say something applies to everyday life, not only dramatic emergencies. For Alicia Perez, the lessons are more personal. She wonders if she could have pushed harder when Lauren brushed off concerns, or if a direct confrontation with Adam might have changed the outcome. Guilt weighs on her, even though no one blames her for a tragedy she never orchestrated. Over time, counseling and support from friends help her realize that her attempts to help Lauren were sincere. She cannot rewrite history, but she can honor her friend's memory by continuing to advocate for other vulnerable individuals. As the weeks pass, the block gradually resumes its routines. People maintain their lawns, dogs bark at mail carriers, kids play hopscotch on sidewalks. Yet an invisible thread ties them together more tightly than before. A collective resolve that none of them will again allow appearances to overshadow genuine concern. They face the shadows lurking behind closed doors, and now stand determined to keep those shadows from claiming another life. Months have passed since the trial ended, and the people of Aspenwood Drive have slowly moved forward, forever changed by the tragic story of Lauren Bennett. While the headlines have faded from the local news, the memory of her life and the lessons from her death continue to shape conversations around town. Neighbors who once kept to themselves now say hello more often. They share the occasional coffee or lend a sympathetic ear when something seems amiss. A new culture of watchfulness has taken root, replacing the once unspoken rule of mind your own business. Sergeant Timothy Burns reflects on the investigation. Though he's relieved that justice was served, the case weighs on him. The regret of not uncovering the signs earlier, the sorrow of a life lost. In interviews, he urges the community never to ignore red flags, no matter how minor. Sometimes, all it takes is one person noticing and speaking up, he reminds them, a quiet passion lacing his voice. Alicia has become an advocate, dedicating her free time to a local charity that supports survivors of domestic abuse. Her talks at town meetings reach new ears, teachers, business owners, and civic leaders who vow not to let another tragedy unfold unchecked. The discussions spark proposals for better funding of hotlines and outreach programs. While no one can fully erase the heartbreak of Lauren's fate, her story now serves as a rallying point for those determined to stop violence in their midst. At the close of this documentary, CrimeByte reminds viewers that true crime tales are more than grim headlines. Each one represents a real person with dreams, loved ones, and a story that deserves more than a cautionary ending. If we learn anything from Lauren Bennett, it's that compassion and vigilance can turn the tide in someone's darkest hour. May her memory guide us to look closer, act sooner, and never shy away from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. In the calm of the park, the world seems to slow down, where heartbreak and healing intertwine, and the lessons from dark paths etched into the hearts of those left behind. Lauren Bennett's story may have been racked with violence, but in her death, a legacy of vigilance and love stands tall, as this community, though forever altered, now embraces its responsibility to defend, to notice the unsung screams, and to stand for those who struggle in silence. The glowing candles are this community's promise that light will always find a place to shine, even in the darkest of circumstances. Just as a life must never be forgotten, neither should the lessons they leave behind. Remember to notice, speak up, and protect those in need. This is a story of hope intertwined with loss, a story meant to provoke reflection in our own hearts. If you found this story as engaging and alarming as we have, make sure to like this video, subscribe to CrimeByte for more captivating true crime stories, and click that notification bell so you never miss an important update. Together we can help shed light on the truth, one story at a time.